Tonight, and we'll start with the minutes of the April 8th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at that?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the zoning hearing board discussion of an appeal number 2914. The applicant is Cabrini College, looking for some zoning relief in terms of a dimensional variance to section 280-70.b regarding building length. The applicant desires to expand the Dixon Athletic Center. I see that the applicant's here, and I'm sure you would like to tell us all about this.
Good evening. Good evening, all. Joanne Seemeister from Montgomery McCracken for Cabrini College. With me this evening are Mr. Eric Olson, Vice President for Finance for Cabrini, Howard Holden, Capital Projects Coordinator, Rob Lambert from Site Engineering Concepts, our engineers for the project, and Richard King from WRT, Wallace Roberts and Todd, architects for the project. We're here tonight for an informational session concerning the dimensional variance that Cabrini is requesting from the zoning hearing board later this month. We're scheduled before the middle of the month.
Excuse me, yes, just that, yeah.
The dimensional variance pertains to the expansion of the Dixon Athletic Center, as was previously said. We will be back here again before you in a month or so for the final approval of this expansion. You may remember that Cabrini's land development plan, which was approved in January of 2013, did include some renovations for Dixon. Since that time that the plan was approved, Cabrini has determined that they needed alternate renovations to Dixon. That might be more appropriate, given that the student sports-related programs have pretty much outgrown the facility. There haven't been an increase in student enrollment. In fact, the enrollment is slightly less than it was at the time that the land development plan was approved. However, the student uses have increased at the facility because the programs have expanded. There's a fitness and wellness component, which draws more students to use the facility, necessitating the need for more lockers, storage rooms, equipment space, and the like. To provide you with the description of, and the location of the proposed renovations, I want to turn this over to Rob Lambert at this point.
See if, is Jim in the back? Yep. Good evening, Rob Lambert, here for Site Engineering Concepts. This is just the cover sheet. So as Joanne mentioned, back in, I guess it was January of 2013, this was the approved preliminary plan that came through. And the addition that we were proposing at that time to the Dixon Center is up in the upper left-hand corner here. It was on the west side of the building, right in that corner. We're proposing to amend that plan, and we've submitted a separate preliminary amendment to the preliminary plan and a final plan application that will be coming back to get into all the land development details later months. This plan, all the other improvements on this plan are the same. The only addition is the addition goes on the east side of the building. And so when they really started to flesh out the interior design of it, how it would function, how the building functions, the addition had to grow, and when it grew out on the east side of the building. This was the overall plan that we submitted for zoning. You can see that it removed all the other improvements. That wasn't to try to hide those improvements or anything. It was just to focus on what the zoning relief was seeking. This is the zoning relief plan. It's an enlarged plan showing the Dixon Athletic Center in the center. This is the addition on the east, north, and east sides of the building. These 16 parking spaces would be the first component of the master plan parking. And really what these are doing is replacing parking spaces that are through this parking lot to improve the walkway getting to the Dixon Athletic Center. The last plan, and I'll give my brief description of it. If you have further questions, I'll defer to Richard. But this is the existing building. So in the gray area, this is the existing building footprint. You have a gymnasium at the top. You have a swimming pool down the bottom left, and then there is the lobby and support areas through the center. And you can see those areas were relatively small, very modest facilities when they built it. Upstairs, they had some classrooms and a track above the gym area. So the proposed addition is on the right and the top, so the east and the north side, and you can see the angled portion from the top of the page, or from the previous slide. And what the first floor is going to be is locker rooms, a lobby area, some storage spaces, a training room, and then on the upstairs was more of a fitness center area up on the upper plate. And you can see, just due to the way the gym building functions, is the existing building length, it's 210 by 253, so the building already exceeds the 160 feet. And to add to it, to keep the locker facilities and the sport facilities in close proximity to the gym areas and the other areas that you're going to use in the building, it makes sense to enlarge that building. So the building is going to be, we're proposing 262 by 306. And, you know, they've articulated, WRT has articulated the facade so it doesn't read as one long blank wall to limit the appearance of length. But the overall length, measuring from the furthest point in the back to the furthest point by the pool, that was 306 feet, and from left to right was 262. So it's relatively simple what we're going to be asking the zoning board for relief.
Questions?
I have a couple of kind of minor questions. The plan that you had up, the one that we approved back in 2013,
Yep.
if you could pull that back up. And I can't really see the blow-up of it, but what's dawning on me now is that the top rectangle where you were adding on to the west side of the Dixon Center,
Yes.
that was actually going to also be creating a nonconformity. I don't
At-
recall
at
being
the-
told that you were going to have to go to zoning for that at the time.
At the time, we said that we were going to come back to zoning for that addition, that we knew that that addition would need zoning relief.
So we gave you preliminary plan approval on a plan that didn't have zoning relief? That doesn't make sense to me that we did that. I don't even know how we could do that, actually.
Did we do that?
I don't know. He's saying he has preliminary plan approval. And I'm-
Should have come up during the review process.
Yeah, I don't know that it did. Okay,
terms
so
of
I just was
setbacks
trying to
and-
understand
we
how
had
this side of
acknowledged
the
it
building
at
is.
that
All right,
time.
that's fine. And again, you're saying it's an amendment to this approved plan, but the approved plan, if I recall correctly, there were going to be significant changes to the parking lot to the south of it.
Correct.
And now you're not doing that.
Well, what's going to happen, I guess, with a little bit of the confusion is that this is going to be the amended preliminary plan. So the changes to the south was a parking structure, a student center. We had the parking structure to the south, a link road, changes to parking in the interior of campus. That is still going to be the amended preliminary plan. What we're going to do is separate a piece from that project to bring the gym addition as a final plan to you. So the rest of the improvements are part of a preliminary plan, but we're basically going to phase the final plans of that.
I mean, this is kind of one of those gray areas that we've dealt with before, so it's a question that's come up in the past, is that, you know, how much of a change to a plan? It's not really a change, it's not really an amended plan, it's a new plan. So, and that's not for you to answer, I actually want to hear from staff about that. But the other question I have has to do with well, two things. On the plan itself, the impervious coverage summary, page sheet 1 of 1, the math, there's just a typo because it says that the proposed has a net 2211 of walkways, and that should be a plus sign to
Oh.
add up to the plus 22908.
Correct, yep.
That negative sign should be a positive. But the bigger issue that I'm kind of struck by here is I see some uses in here that definitely require parking with or without an increase in student population. And this plan is saying that there's a net change, there's net no change, and so you don't need any more parking, and you have a pretty significant,
We have a determination from the zoning officer that this facility does not need any parking. That addition to the facility does not need any parking.
was that in our packet?
No.
John, I don't know if you know much about this or not.
Yeah, I don't know when that was done. I don't doubt that it was done. Was that during the land development process?
No, that was a couple, what was it? I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months ago. We met with
I don't know.
Kevin and several others and discussed that
The
fact.
reason I ask that is that you're adding office space, you're adding cafe space. I mean, those are very defined, and to read 280-103B, just by virtue of adding 100, or one space per 150 feet of floor area, whichever is applicable, I mean, you're adding 17,000
So
square feet of parking area, of floor area.
The provision that this building falls under is 208-103B5.
Right.
And it would be a gymnasium, right? And it's one space per 4 fixed seats in the largest assembly room, or area for the largest assembly room, or area for each 40 square feet of floor area available for the accommodation of movable seats in the largest assembly room, or one space per 150 feet of floor area, whichever is applicable to the facility.
Okay,
So-
appreciate that, but you're also adding cafe and office space. I mean, it's right on it's not on this picture, but on the defined one that you just showed. And those
But
have very
this
definite
refers to
parking.
the building. It doesn't,
Okay.
it doesn't separate the individual uses inside the building. It's viewed as a gymnasium.
Right, I mean, I guess that's my only comment, with such a profound existing nonconformity for parking, and you are adding in definite spaces that require parking to be provided under their uses. It's, I never saw the letter that you're referencing. You know,
We'll provide
that-
it as part of our land development.
That's, that's,
Okay.
I guess we're not going to get Kevin's explanation because he's not here, but
I-
that's
I-
curious.
I have it in writing from him, so I'll
Yeah, was
provide you
he,
his
was he
writing.
clear on the uses that you were providing?
We were crystal clear on it. We reviewed the plans with him. We reviewed this ordinance section with him
Okay.
specifically.
I mean, it's not clear on the plan that your proposed addition has specific uses that do require parking to be accounted for. Those are my only comments, but that and the fact that you're taking out a boatload of trees to add in the 16, well, not a boatload, but a lot, I'm tree sensitive, to add in the additional parking.
You know, that parking is, have you been in that lot before? Have you,
No.
Okay, I go up there regularly. They need a crosswalk across that parking lot.
Oh, no, I'm
You don't know
talking
which
about where they're
direction the
taking
kids
the
are coming
parking
from.
out, where they're putting the parking has just a lot of trees. And I'm guessing you just want the parking in proximity to the building.
And actually, we're trying to build the parking in an area that's going to be disturbed as part of the construction. In order to build that, we're probably going to be accessing it from that side of the building. So we'll get into these questions when we get to land development, but there
Okay.
was a purpose for where we put that.
I mean, I think that's my one, you know, if you have the letter, you have the letter, but my one comment is that I would say that in fact you do need to provide some additional parking. That's it. And the correction on the math.
Yeah, I'll add that.
Did we actually approve a plan? I don't remember
I
approving
don't
anything.
remember approving the plan.
In
I
January-
remember
yeah.
a preliminary plan. I don't remember this
Did we actually approve a plan?
at a preliminary stage.
Not with all those other things on it.
Yeah, we did,
Well, the
but the
garage,
part
yeah,
that
we
I
did the
don't
garage.
recall dealing
That
with.
might have
You
been
made
just
a
before.
recommendation to the board, and the board approved the plan.
Right. The part I don't remember is the zoning variance for the building length. That's
don't
not
remember
ringing a
that.
bell at all for me.
No.
I'm a little concerned
Well,
about the crosswalk
That's
area.
moot because they're not going to build that anyway. So we do have it all in place
No,
now.
right.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about the crosswalk area. I don't know that that's even adequate to provide safe crossing of that parking lot, because I'm familiar with the parking lot as well. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything you can do to improve that further for safety for the students crossing through there, because it's very tight. It's a tight parking lot, and it's tight to drive around in. It's when something's going on, it's people looking for spots. It's tricky, and people trying to cross. I'm in favor of improving the safety. If you can do something even further, I don't know that this
We'll
is
take a look at the detail and do it.
because it is I think it's a dangerous parking lot to cross. The other question I had is the parking that you're providing at the tail end of it. Does that really make full use of what you're doing there? I mean, is there a way you can have parking on both sides and make it a different configuration and get more parking in there? You know, just because, you know, you have the aisleway, but you don't have parking on both sides of it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there any way to get parking on both sides and have more of a square configuration, or
Yeah,
is
we
it
were
the
trying to-
trees, or?
Well, we were trying to pull it in, and again, I'd like to discuss this more in our land development discussion. We're really here to talk about building length. But when we're taking a look at that area, in order to construct the building, we're going to be disturbing most of the area where that parking lot is. And so the idea was, basically as a restorative measure, we're putting in the parking instead of pushing further out where we won't be disturbing and adding additional disturbance in order to build the parking. So we're just trying to overlap those areas.
Helpful to have that information, thank you. And the area that we originally had, that was meant to be kind of an entryway to the building, right? When you were proposing in the original location, it was going to be like a new entryway to the building?
It was similar facilities. When they were envisioning it here, they were looking at some more, varsity locker room areas, but when you really started looking at the function of the building, it didn't work as well in that location, and obviously it grew from there.
So the proposed area that you're looking at with your new buildings coming on board later, the entrance, it makes sense for, pedestrian traffic and everything better?
It'll actually make better sense.
So they
than
don't
what's
have
there
to
today.
walk around?
Right.
Okay.
The neighbors, are they okay with the fact that this side of the building's now going to encroach on their side of the property?
You can't really see this from anywhere. It's going to sit down. As far as gradient-wise, the main entry driveway is higher than where this building is. This actually sits down relatively low. It's not going to appear to be two-story. It's almost going to appear to be one-story from this corner. And then you do have a significant distance from any neighbor to where that building is.
Are they in the loop where they were all contacted, the families on Berwyn and Tall Oaks, were they all are made aware of the zoning notice?
I think as part of our zoning notice, I'd have to defer to,
I just don't know if it's the 500 or 1,000 feet. Do we know?
I defer to Mr. Rice for the notification for zoning.
Okay.
This is a comment on what they're asking for is a dimensional variance to the
Right.
zoning hearing board. So your recommendation on whether you think that is what they're proposing, it's about a 28,000 square foot addition on top of the existing 90,000. So it's a third bigger that they're seeking in front of the zoning hearing board for the variance. So that's what's in front of you. I know you're looking at all the issues, but the size of that and the scale of that, I think the zoning hearing board would appreciate, whatever comments you have on that or any conditions that you think might be appropriate.
Well, this gets to my question about do we, I don't have the scale to know what those neighbors on Tall Oaks and Berwind have received notification of this, because the earlier approved plan had the addition on the west side of the building and it wouldn't have impacted them. This is a bigger impact to those neighbors. That's why I was asking, would they have received letters, or is it outside of the?
I don't think they would have gotten notice of this meeting tonight.
Of the zoning notice, of the zoning.
I believe there's a 500-foot
But 500 feet from the building or 500 feet from the property
of
line,
the
John?
lot in question.
Okay, so then they should have received the letters. Pardon me?
It looks like only 4 or 5 are actually within that 500 feet.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not here, so, okay.
Okay, we're going to do 2 more things with this before we begin to discuss it a little more. And that is there any public comment? No. Does staff want to make some comments to us, recommendations, et cetera? I know there's no formal engineering review at this level. We're not going to address traffic or anything like that today either.
Well, that would be a land development issue,
Yeah.
and what's in front of you is just this zoning consideration.
As a point of clarification, this, because it's an amended plan, this will be subject to our new zoning, our new stormwater ordinance, I would imagine. I know this is not,
That's a good question.
oh,
The ordinance has been advertised. Once a subdivision land development's been approved, they typically are vested against any intervening changes in ordinances. That is not a subdivision ordinance or a zoning ordinance. That's something that we'll have to look at when it comes in. I don't think it's been filed yet.
Yeah, Friday.
Or has it?
Yeah, last Friday.
And amended?
Amended preliminary.
Okay.
Yeah, don't you have to get zoning before you do land development applications?
No, we can file concurrently. We filed last Friday for full land development, so staff will be in the process of reviewing the full package.
So I guess my recommendation for one condition would be that it meets the current stormwater ordinance at the time that it's goes for final approval.
Yes.
Anyone want to suggest other things? The new.
That's,
Well, why shouldn't it?
Well, you said current.
No, at the time of final approval, whatever's current at that
Doesn't
time.
the staff need to make that decision?
We're just making a
we're making
recommendation to zoning.
recommendation.
Okay.
And actually, that should probably be in the form of a motion when we get to that point.
I can definitely attest that they are short on facilities, because I got an email from the Dixon Athletic Center not but a week or so ago saying that they're going to have to limit the amount of hours that the public can come in, because they just don't have the facilities to house the staff, the faculty, the students, and so now those who are community members have reduced hours because they just don't have enough room in the building. And this is a college that's serving the community as well, and as long as they're still doing those types of programs, I think it's great to be able to allow them to expand an existing building instead of building a brand-new one and then having to do double facilities. So I think it'd be nice to consider that.
I guess the difficulty is you have to have a hardship in order to get the variance, so that's on the applicant, not on us, but we're just commenting on, I don't know how to,
The propriety of,
Whether we have a problem with the size and.
because when you're
Going
going for
forward.
zoning relief, you have to show a hardship.
Yeah, but that's not our decision.
That's not our
No.
decision,
No.
but I don't know what our role is, really.
Just to say whether or not we generally like this plan, whether we're okay with it at this point.
because all the other issues will be available for us to review and dissect when they go through land development.
One question I do have, if you look at the, sheet 1 of 1, the zoning relief plan, the category whose side yard setback is 17 feet, it's non-conforming. Where is that?
Which setback, I'm sorry?
17 feet. Category 1 is supposed to be 125, and it's 125. Category 2 is supposed to be 217 feet. Do you see what I'm talking about?
I know, it's not this building, it's going to be one of the other buildings on campus.
Oh, this is the campus as a whole. Oh. Excuse me.
So technically, the legend or the zoning summary is for all those projects.
Correct, yeah, it's for, the legend is for the campus,
Okay,
And not this building.
correct.
Does this come anywhere near, is it anywhere near the minimum setbacks, or is that what that diagonal line?
Basically, it's the diagonal line across the back is the minimum setback from this north property line.
Okay, and that, so the building's right along the edge of it on the one side.
Correct.
But you don't need any kind of variance from that because it might only be a quarter of an inch, but you meet it.
Correct, we meet the requirement.
So since we can't necessarily rely on the zoning summary, can you describe in a ballpark sort of way the setbacks to different, I can see that the property owners on Tall Oaks, et cetera, that's way over 200 feet.
Right, so this is basically a 200-foot setback from that property line, and then maybe I'll go back to the previous slide. So you can see in this area, it's 200 feet, and so on this side, if I ballparked it, I'd say it's 350, 400 feet to that closest property line. So you're a significant distance.
And I'd like to make one comment that since we extensively reviewed the Villanova project, and this is not an attempt to do the same thing, but certainly under the 200-foot rule that would apply to these campuses if they wanted to do a CICD, this is more than 200 feet from any other property. And if you look at it in a certain way, you could say it's similar in that sense to Villanova, and Villanova will be getting relief on building size.
I guess also I would suggest that as a condition, the parking that Susan brought up be addressed. I think if this zoning relief were granted, it should be granted with the conditions that stormwater and parking are adequately satisfied.
Let me ask staff on that. I mean, we're certainly going to have another swing at the ball through land development. Pardon?
Are we going to be able to address the parking at that time or not?
Sure, during land development, one of the requirements is the adequate parking, and that can all be reviewed as part of land development.
Right.
They'll have to meet the ordinance and provide the specific number of parking spaces that are required for either the use or the structure.
Is that something that zoning's going to look at? Are they going to get that letter that Kevin apparently wrote? Or will they not even review that in the context of this?
They
They'll just be
can,
looking at
and they
dimensional.
should. I mean, it should be part of the
Submit it.
application.
You don't have any problem submitting
Yeah.
a letter.
Okay. I mean, I agree with Elizabeth. It makes sense to add on to the existing building. I'm not opposed to that. You know, it's kind of an awkward shape, but it's more that it just struck me that you're adding in some uses and not providing, and saying you don't provide any parking. Granted, you have your letter. I haven't seen it. We didn't know about that letter. You know, I would support the relief in this circumstance. I will assure you that at land development, you know, what that side of the building looks like and the potential impact on the neighbors is, you know, I'll be looking at that, because you are getting a variance and encroaching that in that direction versus the original plan had you going toward another institution that wasn't going to have any, you know, impact on a neighbor. So that's my only comment. And I'm happy to make a motion that we would, you know, support this. Regina, I think that we're going to have to deal with those two things in land development.
Well, no,
I think once we're at land development, there's no bargaining stance.
Okay, I don't think we're approving the parking tonight, and we're not really approving, we're here to make recommendations. So I guess we
but
could
if you
recommend.
extend relief, you can ask for something in return. And in return, we're just asking for them to meet the,
We're not actually granting the relief,
no, well, this is only suggestion to zoning. Zoning can ask for these conditions. They can ask for that to be conditioned upon providing parking for the new space, as well as providing stormwater management up to our new standards for the new space.
See, I like the stormwater piece of what you've been saying because it's a little bit gray. The parking, I think, is in comparison black and white, and that has to come back up. I think it has to come back up in land development.
Well, I think basically our code has a
But
loophole.
stormwater might
It has a
not.
loophole in it where it comes to parking. And the loophole is that big, large area you're looking at is not changing. So they're not going to have to provide any additional parking based on our code. So in return for giving the relief in zoning, zoning can request from them to provide the parking for the additional space. That's something we can, if you guys don't support that, that's fine, but I think
No,
the
but-
parking's really tight there.
I don't know that we should have a full laundry list of everything that we would ordinarily do, but I take that these are bigger issues, and certainly the stormwater I don't have a problem with, and, you know, maybe everybody is in complete agreement with you. This is a recommendation, not an up-down vote.
It's very likely that they ignore our recommendations, so.
What's the plan for the parking garage that you guys were going to put up near Dixon? You said you're phasing this now. What's the plan for that garage?
As to timing,
As to it ever coming to be and, you know,
well, we
dealing with
submitted
the parking?
plans to be approved with the intention of building all of the buildings. This will be the first one that we undertake. And we will do that as soon as we get final approval, assuming we get the variance request. And when we get the approval on that, this will be the first building that we will do.
Now, the parking garage, it's going to, I'm sorry, this is Doug. The parking garage is not along Eagle Road. It's the place you looked at it the last time it was here. Is that correct? That's what you're planning to put it on?
We split it into two parking.
I recall that.
Okay, one.
It's still split into two. You have the one north one near Dixon Athletic, and then you have the south structure down by Eagle Road.
Okay, but that's not as big as it was originally. Okay, so basically the plan is unchanged from other than the shape of this particular building.
Correct.
All right.
I
Thank
have a
you.
related question for staff. Since we approved a plan, a preliminary plan, what's the lifespan of that before they have to reapply? I think
Typically, it's
fi-
5 years, but they have submitted a revised preliminary plan, and the final plan for this phase that deals with Dixon is what was submitted on Friday, which will be in front of you most likely in June.
Okay. Other comments? Kathy, you have anything?
I have no problem with what you're doing here. My question is, what is building 2 after this addition? Are you going to be building the parking?
I don't know that the school's decided which one is building 2 yet.
But it will be one of the parking structures?
It's likely, but I can't speak for what the next plan would be
Okay. Thank you.
at this point.
Does anyone like to make a motion at this point? Are we at that point? Are we comfortable? I think, Regina, you had a lot of points.
I think it's a good plan. I think it's something that they need to do. I think we should facilitate it. I agree with your motion, Celeste.
Okay, then I recommend that the zoning relief be granted conditioned upon meeting the stormwater ordinance in place at the time of final plan approval, as well as providing parking for the additional space that's new to this plan.
And so
that
that's
were
a
the variance.
recommendation, but.
Recommendation to the
yeah,
zoning
Right.
board to condition those, the variance on those two.
Okay. John, do we look good with that?
That's fine.
Okay.
I mean, that's, relief from the zoning hearing board, whether it's a special exception or a variance, can attach conditions to deal with, what's being proposed.
Okay.
It's appropriate.
Do
And
we
I'll
have a s-
second that motion.
Okay, let's call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Item 2 is difficult to describe.
Perhaps I can help you with that, Mr. Chairman.
I think I'd appreciate that assistance
I try not to get
describing.
too detailed because I think we could get really lost in the 300-page document. I'll just give a little bit of history. So at times throughout the year, the engineering department comes to the planning commission with sewage facilities planning modules for projects within the township that update our Act 537 plan. What you have before you here is the Delaware County Act 537 sewage plan for the eastern service area. And in this close to 300-page document, this was nicely done. It shows the different service areas, basically all the routes. And what this talks about is eastern Delaware County, all the many, I think there's 31 municipalities in this region. And our flow goes to the Delcora pump station in some manner, and then on to the Philadelphia Southwest treatment plant. So there was a move afoot to update the Act 537 plan. And when that came about, Delcora was in negotiations with Philadelphia. And this actually predates my time here, and I jumped in when I came here. At the time, Philadelphia was playing very hardball negotiations, and their, for lack of a better term, penalties for our overages in sewage flows were very steep. And when I say ours, I mean ours as a group that goes down to Delcora. So Delcora looked into this and, number one, was trying to renegotiate a contract, and also saw that there was upgrades and things that had to be changed to deal with this moving forward. So if you read a little bit of it, they had 4 alternatives that they came up with, ranging from diverting flow to Delcora's other plant, constructing a new treatment facility, working with the existing facility, and putting in huge equalization tanks. And the thought being, when the flows are really heavy, they would go to those tanks, and as the flows subsided, that would be released. So, like I say, this has been a multi-year project, and through all this, all the different municipalities have been adopting this Act 537. In Radnor, our flow goes to RHM. That's the Radnor-Haverford-Marple Sewer Authority. We are the largest single component of the Radnor-Haverford-Marple Sewer Authority. We pay them about $4 million a year. From Radnor-Haverford-Marple, it goes through another trunk line, Springfield-Upper Darby. And then from Springfield-Upper Darby, it goes to the Darby Creek Joint Authority. And then from there to Delcora. So it's a convoluted route, and that's why we have 300 pages in front of us. The bottom line is this, they're looking for us to enact this Act 537 and get all the municipalities on board so they can move forward with evaluation with the option number 3, which is based on their evaluation is how they would like to move forward. When I first started here, I'd written a memo to the board when this came up that Radnor Township and many other facilities, we're going to be on the line for sizable increases because, number one, we're paying for upgrades to the Delcora plant, but number two, we're going to be obligated to help Philadelphia with its capital costs, and that's been brought through on this many times. So this is before this board as an advisory board so that we can get a recommendation from you before it goes to the Board of Commissioners, which is standard in this process. Now, there's one item in here from staff standpoint. If you read, there's a couple paragraphs on this, but I'm going to read the one that I think is the most salient. The evaluation of alternatives led to the selection of alternative 3, which we discussed. This alternative includes either the adoption and implementation of a lateral inspection and repair replacement time of sale ordinance or development of a written municipality-specific I&I reduction plan. I recommend that the board go with the written municipality-specific inflow and infiltration reduction plan. The other one, the lateral inspection and repair and replacement plan, would require, as each house comes up for sale, the lateral is inspected and repairs are required right then and there. We'll come up with an I&I reduction plan with the help of our engineering firm, Gann and Fleming. We'll work on that, and I&I is a huge portion of this because the less flow we send down the line, the less we all pay. So that's one of the reasons why this plan is so aggressive towards I&I. The Department of Environmental Protection, everybody wants every municipality to cut down on those extraneous flows. Number one, why do you want to send clean water to a treatment plant? So we don't want our rainwater going in our sewer systems. Number two, we all pay for it in our sewer fees. And number three, it overtaxes our treatment plants. So those are the crux of why that has to go. So what you have before you tonight is the Eastern Delaware County Regional Act 537. We're looking for your comments and just like on the previous thing, a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners on this. Again, from a staff standpoint, I will strongly urge that we go with the written I&I reduction plan as opposed to the time of sale plan. It's a very detailed plan. There is one chart which starts to get into the costs, but there is nothing specific to Radnor. We do know that the magnitude is large, what our costs will be. It's specific to one of the authorities, and then from there you have to break it out. So there's nothing here that says Radnor will owe this over these years, but we know that there will be some sizable increases.
I have a question for you. For the lateral inspection and repair replacement time of sale ordinance, is there any way, from just what you understand about the project so far, is there any reason that doing that would decrease or flows? Because, I mean, when you look at lateral, when you're looking at the inspection and repair replacement, I can see bringing things up to code or making them work, function better, but that doesn't really decrease the flow and the amount of sewage that we have going to the plants. Is that correct?
The way they're looking at it is it would reduce I&I, so that every time a house was up for sale, the lateral would have to be inspected. If there was any flaws, so if we saw cracks or openings that would allow inflow or infiltration, that would have to be repaired then and there before the house sold.
Right, but that doesn't do anything with volume going to the, that just means that,
It depends on, I mean, if we inspect laterals in older parts of town, it could reduce I&I. Newer laterals made out of PVC or Schedule 40, there's not as much bang for the buck there. So they're looking for a sweeping generalization to reduce I&I, and that's what that is.
and that would be at the cost of the homeowner? I mean, aren't you
That
in
is
charge
correct.
of your lateral all the way out?
That is correct.
So you're looking at $9,000, $10,000 potentially?
Could very easily be.
Steve, when you were saying that keeping this stormwater out of the sewer line is going to save for the homeowner, your sewer bill is a function of your water bill. It's not really a function of what's actually going down the sewer line.
Well, it is in effect, because what you're paying for per unit of water is based on what we're paying down the line, right? So you're paying per gallon, your sewer bill is broken down into increments, the first so many. Well, those charges are based on what we pay. So the less you pay,
So higher level it's costing us.
Correct.
Got it, okay. And the only other, I did have one question, just for my own understanding. What would cause an SSO in a sewer line, in the sanitary sewer line?
there's many things. A blockage could
Okay.
cause a problem. I've seen many of them.
Okay.
Okay. The I&I. So when we have these huge storms, when we have hurricanes and remnants, Floyd, and the systems become inundated with rainwater because streets are flooded. Look at your lateral cap, which is supposed to be 6 inches above the ground and have a cap. If that's open and we have a flooding time on your lawn, there's tens of thousands of gallons that can go down that over a period of time. That's one of the items that causes it too. Failed pipe could cause an SSO.
Is this also where you guys are trying to cut down on, say, indoor sump pumps that are pumping into the sewer line, and/or other illegal hookups where where rainwater is going into the sewer line?
That's correct, and actually that is part of our ordinance. Before you sell a house, we do inspect your house to make sure that your sump pump does not discharge into the sewer line, because that's groundwater, and we don't want to treat groundwater.
Okay. We don't really have a choice here, right? Eventually, this is just all going to pass, and Radnor will get a bill, or through the Marple
Right.
Haverford Authority, we will.
I mean, I think even if we have contractual obligations, and even if we dug our feet in, if this goes, it's going to come back to us.
So the only
We're gonna
part
be
we really have a choice about is whether or not we do this lateral inspection option, or the agree to commit to reduce I&I.
In theory, you can comment on any part of these 278 pages. The one thing that jumps out to me, where we truly have some choice, is that I&I program or the lateral replacement. And my recommendation to this board, as well as the Board of Commissioners, will be to go with the I&I reduction plan.
But I mean, I guess what I'm saying is the authority wants us to agree to one or the other.
Correct.
Okay.
What ideas do you have for I&I so far?
Hasn't Radnor been doing that for years, or RHM?
Right,
Because they
well-
have a truck with a little TV camera that goes through the holes.
The way RHM works is, based on your flows, is how you pay. So we are the largest component.
Yeah, I realize that, but
And then-
haven't they been inspecting
Right, and
sewer
because-
lines for years?
Because of that component, we get the most of their time for televising, grouting, manhole grouting, and we do. And we do some on our own. We replace lines that are bad. So we've been doing that for decades. This is more specific to laterals now. So there'll be some work we have to do down the road, because, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, the laterals from the main back to the house are the responsibility of the homeowner. So we're going to have to look at legislation with teeth to make sure that once we identify inflow from a lateral, that we can have the homeowner do something to it.
In general, again, I'm an electrical guy, not mechanical or civil. How we're going to assuming that we pick the one which is we being recommended, be reducing I&I as a policy plan. What are the actual things that we would actually do to do that?
When we televise lines, I mean, conceivably, we could say, no, we don't want to do any of this, period. And I'm sure that would be one big monkey wrench down at the county. There's no doubt about that. I think it's fair to do the I&I. So when we inspect our mains, the township's mains, we will be looking for I&I through the laterals. Sometimes we do this in the middle of the night when flows should be basically zero. So when you go by a lateral and it's got heavy flow at 2 in the morning and it's of a certain temperature, there's a real good chance that's groundwater or sump pump or water coming in. So then we have to say what action has to be taken. And that whole course of action and the ability to enforce it will become part of that plan, which is not written yet.
So the overall plan I&I type is merely, not as a small problem, going through and inspecting all the piping and seeing where all the breaks and all those other kinds of things are.
There's a lot of ways you can do it. You can air test lines, you can hydraulically test lines, you can
But it's
visually-
basically testing lines and making sure that
Correct.
we don't have leaks
Correct.
either in or out.
And
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think to further
Thank you.
answer your question, you can do pipe replacement, you can do pipe lining, you can seal manholes, you can replace lids. There's a number of options to do construction-wise where you can tighten those lines up. You can grout the lines. It all starts with the inspection program.
So the main difference would be, rather than waiting till a house is resold, you'd be proactively out there looking for problems in
And-
the laterals
Right,
particularly.
which we do now in the mains. And so what we would do is devise a plan for the township, call it a grid system, whatever. We wouldn't inspect all laterals in 1 year. There would be a plan over years to perform this, and that would be part of that I&I reduction plan.
So would we then have to follow up with an ordinance on how we're going to address identified problems?
And that's what I had said originally. No matter what we do, there will have to be some change in an ordinance so that there's teeth to enforce a homeowner once we find a problem, that they would have, there's some teeth to make them make a repair in some fashion. All the repairs that Roger noted, whether it be replacement, lining, spot repair, raising your lateral vent, your vent, the whole 9 yards. So that, again, that's something that would have to be determined. That's effective in reducing I&I and fair to our residents.
And if we put a plan into place, if that's what we do as a recommendation for our town and it's approved, each town has their own flexibility to choose that, or does the whole county have to go one way?
No, it's municipality specific if you go
Okay,
with
so
that
if as a town we decide that, then it's a done deal.
option. Correct.
And if we put a plan in place and it's not effective, what happens then?
First off, we're up to judge what is effective, right? So we want to reduce I&I. We have I&I in township-owned pipes, and we have I&I in the laterals. And if you read about it, in generality, a lot of pundits will say that X% of your I&I comes from laterals. We don't know what that number is until you start to really analyze it. So you're asking me a question at this point in time I can't answer because I am very confident that our program will be effective.
I guess I'm wondering if there's a kind of a calibration. Once you start this process, do they come back to make sure that you've made progress? Are there certain goals you need to meet if you go this route? How quickly do you have to start to show improvement?
The specifics, I mean, this plan is still going to be some time in being adopted, but the DEP looks at our Chapter 94 reports where we talk about our inflow and infiltration. DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is a state agency, push very hard. They're one of the driving forces in this paragraph being in here. So from them, from RHM and everybody down the line, all municipalities are being strongly encouraged to address I&I, which we will do.
And I guess
if
the,
I,
oh, sorry.
If I can add to that quickly, there are different thresholds, I guess, of what would be effective. There's a financial threshold, and then there's the DEP threshold of whether you have SSOs or not, and which we have very little now, and Steve described what causes them. But the reduction of the I&I would reduce the incidence of SSOs. DEP would be very happy with that. DEP is not necessarily concerned that your sewer bill went down. They're concerned about the environmental impacts. All of the other agencies along the line are also concerned with the financial side of that. So there's two aspects of that, of whether it would be effective or not.
I guess the other question would be, is there any way that the reduction in flows can somehow, the cost effectiveness of that, can that somehow, can we have some kind of a matching program for residents if, say, you find that only 1 out of 10 residents has a problem, but then it's on their shoulders to bear the cost? Is there any way the township can help reduce that cost for those homeowners?
I think you're asking a question that ultimately will be answered by the Board of Commissioners and will be part of, may or may not be part of our I&I plan. But that's really not for this commission to consider, and I certainly don't have the authority to tell you that, yes or no. In the future, this commission might be weighing in on it, but right now, it's just on the Act 537.
When we get to an ordinance, I can think we'll have an opportunity. This is not really that.
So I'm going to move that we approve the Act 537 sewers facility plan update with the option to have the township work towards reducing I&I rather than going with the lateral line replacement plan.
Second, anyone? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Unanimous. Okay, that's great. Well, at this point, is there any public comment in general? No. All right, I'd like to make a motion, or I'd like someone to make a motion that we adjourn.
I just wanted to make an announcement that this Thursday at 7 p.m. at the cottage at the Willows, the Stormwater Advisory Committee will be meeting, and it's an open to the public meeting. So if anyone cares to attend, it's 7 p.m. this Thursday, May 8th, at the cottage at the Willows.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a
we
motion?
adjourn?
Second? I second. All those in favor? Aye.